First of all, I'd like to welcome everyone, all our subscribers. Thank you for joining in. All our panelists, thank you for joining in. This is our monthly Charcha that we do exclusively for our subscribers. This month's Charcha is on conversational and generative AI systems. And given that we are discussing these systems, I asked ChatGPT to write a small introduction for us for this session. So here goes. This is what ChatGPT has got us, with minor editings, of course. But so in this discussion, we will explore the frontiers of technology where human-like conversations and creative expressions are built by machines. We have a great panel of experts to answer all your queries on conversational AI systems like ChatGPT and Google Bard. Joining us today are Nikhil Malhotra, Chief Innovation Officer at Tech Mahindra. We have with us Ankit Bose, Head of AI at IT Industrial Body NASSCOM, and Kazim Rizvi, who is the Founding Director at policy think tank, The Dialogue. Throughout this session, we will delve into the intricacies of conversational AI, exploring its evolution, underlying technologies, and the fascinating possibilities it presents. By the end of this session, we hope you will gain a deeper appreciation for the potential and challenges associated with conversational and generative AI, and leave with a clearer vision of what future lies ahead. So this is largely ChatGPT, what ChatGPT gave us. Minus, obviously, it made a profile for you guys for me, which I edited out, but largely on point. So without further ado, I'd like to just launch into the discussion, and welcome to all the panelists again. So before my first question will be to you, Ankit. Can you, for our subscribers, not dumb down, but at least explain a bit on what these systems are for somebody who is not very technically well versed?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Iktika. So let me take into three angles right here. One is what are the basic applications and what the evolution has been, right? So simply, I think conversation AI is a use of AI technologies or a methodology which enables our computer solution to interact with us human in a natural linguistic way, right? That's what conversational AI is, right? Now, what are the applications, right? Again, we can divide in two parts. One is basic application. We all would have heard virtual assistants, chatbots, language translations. If you go to advanced, right? We right now have personal learning coach. We have, initial bots which can diagnose and help you go to, first stage of your medical, probably issues. They can help you build your own gym plan routine, right? So these are all advanced things, right? So these are the usage of it, right? Now, to understand it in more probably wider way, there were 5 eras to this, right? So and chatbots or conversational AI has not been recent. It has been since 1960s. So the first era was mostly between 1960 to 1990. And that was more of a rule-based era, right? So they were, chatbots like Eliza. So it was like, the first bot who basically started conversing with humans, right? But they were on a preset rules, right? If you go to the second era, that is addition of a lot of data and ML models in that. So now this equipped the chatbots or conversation AI systems to basically be more better and learn over the conversation what you are having. So IBM Watson, Siri were the examples. And that era was 1990 to 2010. The third era is 2010 to 2020, right? This era actually, was an era of pre-training and fine-tuning, right? So a lot of chatbots were built who could understand and generate sentences even better, right? And again, I think in 2020 onwards, we had a blast. GPT was and a lot of things changed, right? So now AI models which equip this conversation AI systems to talk more like humans. They could have a human-like dialect, right? So GPT, Bard, these are the examples. Still it is text, right? As we go ahead, this conversation AI systems will be enabled with multi-modal inputs, which could be text, video, image, all of that. So I think briefly that is what I would want to explain. What is the ecosystem of conversation AI?
Thank you, Nikhil. I would come to you next. So why, in terms of our research and development in AI and ML, why systems like ChatGPT and Google Bard are important? Like, how big a breakthrough or development are they?
So thank you so much, Ritika, and very good evening to Kazim and Ankit. I thank you for Print for having me over here. I think number one, this is a seminal moment, right? This is like a printing press moment for us researchers, or maybe like an Edison light bulb kind of a moment. I've been doing a lot of research in the last 10, 15 years, and my topic of research has been natural language. Now, Ankit explained to you what natural language is all about. I think one of the first few decades of natural language was to understand what natural language is, because it's so difficult. There's so much of disambiguation when you use natural language, right? Like I'm talking to you, I can use a little bit of Hindi words, I can use a little bit of Bengali words in it, but you would be able to get a gist out of what you are trying to get. For the first time ever, we've seen an AI system that can now generate language in a much more human conversational way. And I think that's evidently one of the most light bulb moments. So I think the light bulb moment is really for generation of these words, right? And generation of language, which was for up till now has been limited to certain algorithms that we have been utilizing. But I think for the first time ever, we see something generating conversations like humans could do. I want to make a distinction that this is still not intelligent. It's still an algorithm behind the scenes which is doing it. However, what it poses to us, and when we talk to it, it appears as if we are talking to a human being, which is probably one of the things that Turing alluded to during Turing test. And he said, if you keep me in a room and keep the other room away from me, and you put a human or a machine over there, and if I cannot distinguish while I'm talking to a human or a machine, then the machine's supposed to pass this test, which is Turing test. ChatGPT can now cross that Turing test and pass it. So that is why it's fundamentally very different in terms of what we are seeing, right, as a technology.
Thank you, Nikhil. Qasim, I'll get you in now. We have learned about what these systems are, but what kind of impact do you see in daily lives? We have heard about, what can happen in businesses, but for general people like our subscribers here, what sort of impact do you see on their daily lives?
So I think there are a few things, Yuthika, and thank you so much for having me, and good evening to everybody, all the fellow panelists. I think, there are sort of 4 or 5 broad things which I'm seeing the way people are using it. Number one, it's becoming a tool to be able to gather a lot more insightful information, which of course is allowing people to sort of ask different questions and get information from across various subjects, etc. But one issue I'm seeing over there is around inaccuracy of the data which ChatGPT is providing, in generative AI especially. I think the lack of accuracy is something of a concern right now. And we've seen this especially in the legal field where, lawyers are using it. In fact, there was a case recently, there was a news article where a lawyer used ChatGPT to prepare some drafts, and the case laws that he cited were non-existent. So I think one is the inaccuracy of data. There is a lot of sort of issues around there in terms of how do you correct that, number one. Number two, I think, is in terms of the outcomes. Some of the outcomes are biased. Right. And I'm also seeing the fact that will this replace the influencer economy in the long term? Now, why I'm saying that is because right now you go to a Instagram or a Twitter, you sort of ask questions to people and experts come and respond to you. You have the influencer ecosystem thriving and flourishing where people are posting online in terms of, what you should do, what you should eat, how you should sit, how you should behave, what are the remedies, etc., financial advice, etc. Now, will ChatGPT replace that? Not at this stage, but definitely there is potential where, if let's say in a few years' time, with improved modeling and greater accurate data, it can become an advisor in terms of financially or health-wise or etc. So I think that's something which I'm seeing that a lot of people are asking questions about relationships. They're asking questions about jobs. Of course, a lot of them are subjective, but people are interested to understand how it can help them over there. So I think that's number two. Number three is around the fact that, especially in spaces where There's a lot of reading, writing, and analysis, summary, etc. being done. And this is true for fields of research, legal research, even in media. ChatGPT is now being used by professionals, which is helping them as a tool to maybe summarize a report or, edit a document, or maybe, sort of help with basic research. So we are moving away, and why I feel this is a watershed moment is because until now, if I were to go online and seek some search of some fact or whatever instance in the history in the past it may have happened, I would go to a search engine. They'll come up with a few links, and that's all there is. Now with ChatGPT and generative AI, what you are seeing is not just information, but somewhere information which is converted into knowledge and insights, which reduces your job of assimilating a large amount of data sets to be able to come up with a theory or a thought process. It helps you build a thought process to a certain degree. And of course, because it's not very intelligent even now, and I do not think it's going to replace humans, because what we have is our ability of intuition, our soft skills of, just the ability which human beings have in terms of emotional intelligence is so far ahead that it will always remain a tool. However, it is definitely cutting down on very basic tasks. So does that mean there will be job losses? I would say there will be change in terms of the jobs which will come up after ChatGPT is mainstreamed. In fact, already we are seeing on YouTube, I'm seeing influencers and experts coming and saying, I'll give you a masterclass in ChatGPT, I'll give you this. So they are making money from this, right? So there is opportunities of employment coming up already from ChatGPT and generative AI. And I'm seeing in a lot of organizations, and we are a think tank, so our bread and butter is on research, right? So I'm seeing researchers in our ecosystem, our colleagues, friends, they're using it in different ways to sort of, just sort of develop some thought. But unfortunately, a lot of fact checking has to go on. And I think that is where it's still a work in progress, and there is a long way to go.
Thank you so much, Kazim. I will pause and I'll ask our subscribers if they have any questions for our panelists. Please do write in the chat box, and we will take it up. We have got two questions right now. One, a subscriber wants to know then they can currently interact with Alexa, they can currently interact with Siri. So how is ChatGPT different from these systems? Nikhil, would you like to take this one?
So I think Siri is a little older. Alexa is a little younger in terms of what we are doing. But I think Siri, if I may go slightly technical, Siri was largely in terms of semantic understanding. So when I say semantics, you can actually say, look, I'm going to a hotel and I'm going to a motel. If you consider these hotels and motels similar, right, you're actually going to some place of staying. Siri would be able to use that semantics meaning to actually understand your voice, right? So you would also experience something in Siri. If it doesn't understand, it tells you go to a web search, and it suddenly opens a web search, because these were semantic systems. They were natural language understanding systems, and natural language, after understanding and getting to a certain context of meaning, it would speak out in terms of speech to text, right? It was not a conversational system. Similarly, Alexa came up. Alexa has got similar skills, slightly better, because Alexa uses a component called BERT, which is a kind of relational transformer and bidirectional, which allows you to understand semantics even much better. So now to Alexa, you can actually give a document, try and ask a question about the document. Alexa would probably reach you to the point where exactly in the paragraph you would find an answer and give you that answer as well. All of them have been one directional, if you notice, right? They are natural language understanding systems. Now, what happens with ChatGPT and some of these generative systems is they have become generational as well. And I'll give you a simple example. And you can pick up anything from an open domain, right? So number one, they were a little closed domain as well. Now you go into an open domain world, and I did this experiment with ChatGPT. I said, look, I've seen pink elephants fly. And back comes the reply from ChatGPT, you're either hallucinating, there are no such pink elephants, and elephants don't fly. I retorted back and I said, no, but my wife is saying she's seen a pink elephant, so they must be flying. And it comes back with an answer and says, if your wife's considering this, it must be true. Now, notice the tone of the conversation. I know I have fooled it. I know I've retorted to it. I've changed the perspective of ChatGPT, but look how the system itself has suddenly become conversational. It's not one directional. It's not just giving me information of context. It's trying to regenerate some of the words over a time series, one by one, trying to make a meaning in a grammatical sense and give me an answer like a human being would, right? And you would find a similar answer from a 5-year-old. So normally I call ChatGPT as a 5-year-old kid, or largely a 6-year-old kid, which would try and respond to you, may not be always right. It's overconfident when it speaks about, because it wants to give you an answer. So that's why we say it hallucinates as well. But that feeling itself, or that feature itself, is so unique with this generational system, which you did not find in Alexa and Siri.
Okay, we have another question from a subscriber, Prashant Kulkarni. It's a commentary come question. He says, I'm not worried about job, but I'm worried about biases. Is ChatGPT and the likes could be free from biases? And are they regulation ready? Again, not worried about as much a person, but more as a society. Ankit, would you want to take this?
Ready? Is the government or ecosystem or industry ready? With the the massive change happening, or new things getting built, it's not ready clearly, right? So if you see, GPT is built on data set which is publicly available, right? Web scroll, books, Wikipedia, all of that. Same goes for Bard, right? Now they have been built on systems which already have data, and the data will have bias, right? So that is there. So right now the systems what we have, or probably the GPT or Bard or whatever, they will have inherent bias. But when we productionize it, when we try to implement it at large, right, there has to be mechanism built which can detect bias, right, and detect if any harmful implications are coming due to that bias, right? You detect that and you feel that. I think that's what is getting done right now. Okay, and on the regulation part, I think a lot of discussions are happening, on regulation. But are we ready to regulate, and what should we regulate? How should we regulate? That is something what we have to think. I can go deep on what is the philosophy on regulation also, right? So at least what I think, right? Regulation will curb innovation, right? Will curb research. Alignment is definitely required. Alignment on these points like bias, privacy, security, all of that is required. But again, I think we should have more open, approach where we have government-led, industry regulation, where government is leading the industry to define what are the frameworks, what are the, voluntary reporting they can do, which can help innovation, research, at the same time regulate and build trust in the society at large, right? So, yeah, that's the answer.
Yuthika, if I may add something to Ankit's point, right? So we are on a committee which actually is looking towards this regulation sector of AI. But I think I'll just pose a question to the person gentleman who's asked this question, right? So I saw him on the chat window as well. See, look, there's been a misnomer. I don't like the terminology responsible AI. I think about 90% of human beings are not responsible, right? So we actually tend to put responsibility on top of a system which wants to create AI. So my ideology is that rather than looking at responsible AI and saying that biases are there or not, which is inherent in us as well, we are also very biased in terms of how we deal with the world. It's important for us to look at whether the AI is explainable or not. And I think that's the main purpose. What has happened with some of the neural networks and gain in technology in AI is that we have lost the art of explaining the answer. And that's exactly what's happening with ChatGPT, right? And that is a very inherent concern. And that is important for us as researchers, as scientists, as a community to put a guardrail to understand what is the explainability. So Yuthika and Kazim come to me for a loan. I will give it to Kazim, but not give it to Yuthika. I can't explain this today with my neural networks and my AI, which is an important problem. Because Yuthika can come back to me and say, look, why didn't I get the loan? I've got the same credentials. I've got the same education system. I can speak well like Kazim. What did you think that was not good for me? That is an important feature for the next phase of AI, rather than making sure that we remove biases. Biases will be there. I can guarantee you for the next 100 years, we won't be able to curate a data which is biased because it's created by human beings. And this is bound to be biased. How can we regulate that bias in a boundary context, but make it much more explainable why it took a bias and why it didn't is an important. Make it much more explainable why it took a bias and why it didn't is an important question for us.
Qasim, would you also want to contribute in this, like talking about biases and overall regulations?
I think I agree with, in terms of the fact that human beings are inherently biased, right? We all have our own political biases, we have our own social biases, economic biases, and which is what is fed into the AI system as well. I think but coming from a social science background and coming from a law background and people who are studying technology and the impact on society, I think what is lacking right now is reducing the inherent bias within the technology which we see today. For example, facial recognition technology. Now, there is enough data to suggest that globally, and we've seen this happen in the US, I think, and even in the UK, that facial recognition technology systems are not inherently accurate, even with the extent of having human level bias, right? There's huge amount of data mismatch, 70%, right? And there are issues in terms of how it assesses and how it sort of defines who may or may not be a criminal based on a lot of historically biased data, but also because the amount of data which is being fed may not be a lot. So I think one of the issues which we are seeing right now is that the technology grows and it learns and it grows, and the more you use it, it learns. Now, in this process of 3 to 5 years, it will have very high amount of bias, which could have significant implications on different communities, especially marginalized communities. And I think that's a question which we need to ask, that although there will be a bias with the technology, I don't think anything will be 100% foolproof, but having 60-70% rate of mismatch is unacceptable. How do you bring that down to 10% or 15% at the max? Right. At this stage, can an AI replace a cop? No, it can't. Does an AI understand the sensitivities which maybe a professor or a counselor would understand? I don't think it has that amount of data sets to be fed in as well. So what you need is high quality data. You need variety of data, and you need large amounts of data to be fed into it with algorithms that are designed in a way that minimizes bias. So we need some sort of transparency in how these algorithms are being designed. We need some sort of understanding in terms of, what is the thinking behind designing and collecting the data sets which is being collected. And I think that's where regulation comes into play, that you don't want to regulate the technology at the end. What you need to do is a 2-stage principle-based guidelines. You don't need a heavy-duty law. What you need is at the development stage, when the algorithms are designed, the models are being designed, there needs to be some discussion and understanding in terms of the guidelines which have been set out. Number one. Number two, the developers who are coding this technology, what is their background? Where are they coming from? What is the social strata? Which part of society they belong to? What is their economic sort of status, because we need members of all communities to be part of the development stage of AI. Number one. Number two, when it's being deployed by sectoral industries, be in healthcare, education, you need to understand how it plays out and what will the results be. So a lot of sandboxing is needed. I don't believe in heavy duty regulation, especially at the initial stage of a technology, but I do believe that certain guardrails and principles are needed to be able to give some confidence within the community that this is something which can be, just deployed at a mass scale.
Thank you. Taking this topic on regulation only ahead, there are a lot of red flags that people have raised once, especially after ChatGPT-4 came out. Just yesterday, we had a lot of signatories and signing a letter saying that AI can risk extinction and comparing to nuclear war. And I would like to quote that line. They are saying that we need to mitigating the risk of extinction from AI should be a global priority alongside other societal scale risks such as pandemic and nuclear war. So comparing something to nuclear war first, I want all three of you to come in on this. Do you agree with this statement? Do you think it's exaggerated? If yes, why? And if no, what are the potential risks that AI brings.
You want one of us to go ahead? I'll go ahead, Yutika. Yeah, so it's like any technology, right? So it's like a nuclear war, but they're saying the nuclear weapons were built, right? So and you can use nuclear weapons for good and for bad. But I think there is a risk, definitely. I think for technology like this to get into somebody's hands when it's not being used properly is definitely a risk. It's also a boon in a lot of ways. Of what we are trying to do in terms of, improving human condition, improving human lives, to automate things, to do it faster, to do it better, right? So it's like utilizing the machine's IQ and our EQ together. And we have a terminology we use it called enhanced intelligence, called EI, right? So EQ plus IQ is EI. So that's also a scenario, and there's a risk scenario as well. I think from a governance point of view, there are 2 or 3 things that we should do. I think put guardrails and boundary context. That's very important. And it has to be use case perspective. What you have seen in the outside world, when ChatGPT goes out in the open, you can create a poem, you can ask it all sorts of questions. I think is a very kiddish play on ChatGPT at the moment, right? So the moment of truth is when ChatGPT gets applied within enterprises, which actually impacts human beings. And I think that's where it is incumbent on industries to put a guardrail, put a proper condition saying, look, what I'm doing is for the end consumer and I can't go bad over there, right? So that's a boundary condition for you. Secondly, I think kids are more vulnerable. And with toys today, with Internet of Toys and certain things like these, I think they are the most vulnerable entity at this point. So if we can have a regulation, or if bodies decide transference of data across boundaries and also utilization of that data within these toys and whatever kids get, is a very important condition. And I think that is the first thing that we should actually look at, because they're the most vulnerable, entity to react back. But I think the third part is it's incumbent on, yes, the government for governance, but it's also incumbent on academia to train students in a way that there's an ethical way of running technology. You can't go amok with tech. You can't go a tech which doesn't have a kill switch. And also on industries, to make sure that there is a liable sector kept saying, I would use technology in the most ethical way, and I would explain what I've built. Some kind of a Hippocratic oath saying, I would be able to explain what I've built to a certain extent, which is possible by me. I know it's a black box, but I know what I've done and what it will produce as an objective, right? And then putting a boundary context around it should help us save some of these challenges. But don't get my only thing is don't get scared because you're using ChatGPT in the open domain. I think that's kiddish. I don't think it does anything, right. And they've done significant. I think Microsoft and OpenAI have done significant amount of work in terms of delimiting some questions. If you go the wrong way, or if you go to the other side, by giving you a blank answer from ChatGPT saying, look, this is a wrong question. We are not supposed to answer this, right? And so on and so forth. This will continue, right?
Ankit, would you want to go next and also answer on your viewpoint on whether or not we should be pausing AI developments? That has also been one of the debates.
Yeah. So right now, if we see, right, the AI technology or Gen AI technology, right, it has a nascent stage, right? So right now, as if, what I view, it is very advanced, very productivity booster. It is not falling on the risk category. But as we go ahead, I think definitely it will fall there. So right now, the transformer models, they are just a token generator, right? And as I think Nikhil said initially that, it doesn't have intelligence, right? So it's just generating next token based on the corpus of data what it has, right? But, at the same time, as we go ahead, we have things from 3 angles. One is from an angle of researcher, right, who is researching this novel methodology. Second is from a user perspective, developer perspective, developer who is developing on the, various techniques which is built by researcher, right? Third is user. So we have to understand what are the obligations of this, and also understand what are the harms which can lead, right? So that's the code key, right? And build guardrails around that, right? Again, I think guardrails are not enough. We have to build operation protocols when we productionize it in, production and enterprises and products, how, they are safeguarded, right? That's what is needed at the first probably side. The other side is awareness building, right? I like what Nikhil said, right? So it's not that, AI can cause harm, but if people are aware, how it can cause harm, they are better cautious on that, right? So we have to build awareness at multiple levels, right? Right from our education system, we have to probably implement ethical AI or ethical, tech curriculums in that. And that's what I think probably government is also thinking. There's a roadmap getting built, which will plant ethical, AI courses right from school, college, your engineering, non-tech, and also, master's stage, right? That's what is getting done. I think you had a second question also. I answered the first one. What was the second question? Can you repeat that for me?
On whether we need to pause the developments of AI.
Yes, I don't think we can pause. Right? So it's no one, option to pause it. We need alignment, but we have to have guardrails and governance around that, right? You cannot pause the innovation and research, right? So that's the answer for that.
Great. Kazim, I'll bring you on. We have 2-3 questions, and all are around jobs and impact of AI on jobs. And also one very interesting question on impact, ChatGPT impact. How does ChatGPT impact creativity of students in the long run? Bikramjeet Singh has asked. And Ankur Bajpai has asked, how soon you think AI will be fully fit to take over large number of human jobs, like in terms of number of years, 3 years or 5 years? So floor is open to you for these questions.
Thank you. Very, very interesting questions. And I think only a human could have asked, not a AI. So definitely, I think those who have asked the questions, I believe, reading the questions, they are quite intelligent, that they should not worry about jobs. But, jokes aside, I think, look, we sometimes underestimate the power of human brain itself, right? And I think I just want to sort of take us back hundreds of years ago when Industrial Revolution started, right? How technology was introduced and it changed the way the world functions. Very recently, the computer was invented a few decades ago. It was supposed to replace everything. It did replace the typists, but it introduced so many different jobs. It actually brought in more jobs. The internet did the same thing. It did change the nature of jobs. A few jobs were redundant, but it introduced a huge number of jobs, which were now, the IT sector is literally driving the fastest growing and the largest companies in the world. So the fact of the matter is that with every technology advancement, we've seen historically that jobs have risen and not reduced. So that is the basic foundation with which we approach this thinking, that even with AI, definitely, you may look at the fact that very basic, blue collar jobs may get impacted. For example, I think some of the things which we have also been looking at and, people are sort of talking about is that when it comes to, let's say, use cases, right? Content creation, for example, it will help in content creation. Can AI replace a content creator's job? No. What it can do is it improves efficiency and productivity of that person. By using the tool, you can do more. You can spend your intelligence somewhere else. You have a basic draft available, and then you can improvise on that, right? So you have something to work with, your productivity improves. Then, what we're also seeing that it can help in writing code. Now, I'm not a coder, but I can learn this from ChatGPT at a very fast pace. I can design things then, which I can't even imagine doing until a few years ago, right? Even now. So it will help. Definitely, it adds a skill set to me. It adds a lot of variable in terms of my ability to do my job better. Then in education sector, it is being used to create courses, right? Now, ChatGPT on its own cannot create courses. It needs to be fed certain questions. It needs to collect information, and then you can use that to create more bespoke courses. You can train it over time to do that. So your volume increases while you are still deploying the right people to do the coursework for you. Grammar check, editing, all of these things improvises and sort of improves the way people are, doing their jobs today. Yes, it can take away jobs, and definitely, I'm sure organizations are looking at efficiency, and they may look at ChatGPT as, it could replace some interns, for example, in their organizations, that they may not need entry-level staff for some of the things which it does. But I also feel that because of the nature of the technology and the ability is so much, there will be new jobs created. And people will have to adjust and upskill themselves a little bit as well, and also look at learning different types of skills. And I think for example, our education system depends a lot on learning in terms of memory. Now that could become redundant with conversational AI in the next 5-10 years, because it can just provide you answers to every factual question. So you don't need to really memorize anything, which is great, because now you can think and you can develop your insights and intelligence on application from theoretical understanding or theoretical memorizing. You can now move to application, which is great for you, right? Which is even better. So I do feel that our education system have to evolve. We have to develop new skill set as well. But I would not be concerned, and I would not sort of fear that it will take away jobs, that it will leave people unemployed. In fact, I think it will add a lot of jobs. So we should welcome this.
Okay, we have one more question, sort of related to use of generative AI in education sector. Sudhir Rao has asked, if this is used prudently as a tool, then it might help accelerate the learning process. But there is a chance of misuse where students' creative level is impaired because of copying the content and not learning to write their own reports or codes. Ankit, would you want to comment on that?
Yeah. So the current systems what we have, right, that can generate some content, but blatantly copying that content will not cut it through, right? So as we have been discussing, it has a lot of bias, hallucination. If a student is just copying from that, I'm sure he will never pass from that. So because it will not give the right, the content or the right, answer required for that assignment or whatever work, right? So that's very tough right now. But at the same time, it can help enhance, students' probably productivity in a different way, right? So a lot of times you have to write summaries or some, sort of basic thing where you need human in loop. You need student who understands the topic, but need, probably few, lines here and there. That can be deployed and used for that, right? Not exactly the systems can help student, copy or probably create assignments, create, sort of things which are blatantly available, right? So that's the first thing. Second is, again, there are systems getting implemented in education system, which basically will arrest if there's an, some sort of values or ill practice of Gen AI. So that is also getting deployed. So balances are getting built at the other side also.
We have one more question from Karthik Parashar, and Nikhil, if you would want to comment on that, he asks, will we be able to use AI in government departments to overcome bureaucratic hurdles? Especially important question in Indian context, given our scale.
I don't want to get on record about giving the answer to this one, but I think AI is being used in government forums, right, to a lot of extent. I think when the government introduced Jamstack, I think a part of it was also the data that gets collected also has a lot of way in which discriminative AI or AI that understands the patterns is being utilized. How generative AI would be used? I think India's seminal moment to be used in government sectors is to actually do colloquial language. And that's a huge advantage for India, right? So imagine a Kisan trying to ask a question on VoiceBot about the pesticides that he or she wants to use in their farm. Great answer. It could actually come from a government portal. That's generative AI, right? So imagine somebody trying to get loan from, some scheme in government and don't know what the scheme is all about. There is a website, you can go over there. But most of our, the people who would use this would not go to the website to understand this. Huge example where you could use generative AI, to actually, for an enterprise kind of a search where you actually ask a question and the answer comes back from that particular system. Whether we'll be able to replace bureaucrats or not, we'll have to wait for another 3 decades to see what that happens. But I think it's not a bad thought if we can actually have an IAS governed by an AI who can actually give you some kind of information around a specific constituency or an area. It's a far-fetched thought, it's a moonshot, but why not? But we'll have to figure it out, right? Not at the moment, as Kazim and Ankit have said, it's not there at the moment.
Yes. Also, Nikhil, what do you think would be more India-specific use cases for to reap benefits of this technology?
So I've told you, dialect, 1645 dialects, 27 mother tongues. We take 12 languages. We still have a lot to go. And dialectization is a great idea. And I think for us as India, we should actually be building our own. So see, the transformers are one way in which GenAI is done. We should also now be opening up research and development to see there are other mechanisms of generation and using language. And that's a huge possibility for India to take lead in terms of AI across the world, right? Up till now, we've been consumers of AI. Now we have the ability to generate AI because that's been shown in the world as well. So language is one part. So communication with workforce and translation. Number two, healthcare and life sciences, right? So a large part of drug discovery and drug design can actually be done through generative AI. I know there's a person should be involved in terms of looking at what the answer is, but huge advantage, right? A typical healthcare life sciences company takes about $12 billion and about 12 years, for example, to find a drug to go into a test trial. That can be significantly reduced in a country like India. And with things like pandemic that have followed us, and we're gladly out of it and thankfully out of it. Huge scenario for us to get into healthcare. Number three, weather pattern simulation. A huge case for generative AI simulations as well. Because now we are actually looking at a very changing weather. There's an El Nino effect that is in play. But what would weather simulation mean for us in the future? And how should we look at crops? How should we look at other factors as well? Great examples of generative AI. So India has these. The best part about India is it's probably world's biggest test bed. And I think we should not leave this opportunity, right? Because we've got data about things that we do, but we've also got a lot of fringe data, which doesn't happen in the rest of the world. So it's a huge advantage for India. And I think this is the seminal moment for India to take advantage in Gen AI.
I would like to just jump in. Thank you, Nikhil. Great answer. So 3 points, right, from me, Tika. First is a lot of e-services are getting deployed from government, central and state government. A lot of those e-services are having AI component in that. So they are enabling those e-services with AI component, right? The second is, a lot of government personnels are thinking of using AI for proactive e-service delivery, proactive, probably supporting the society, right? They are thinking on that. The second aspect to this is data. So right now, I think there's a massive, work happening at each level in government on, open data platform that is for the external. And again, there's a work happening internally. How can they use inter-department data to enhance their productivity, right? So those things are getting discussed. A third, I think, Gen AI. So beautiful example, what Nikhil gave is on the language, right? So there's a project called Bhashni, which is driven from MIT, and they want to bring all the e-services to the population who are not English speaker in their local dialect. So, and that itself, if we could implement, right, it's almost 1.5 years. They have been trying to do various things. But again, if we implement Gen AI at that level, I think it will be fabulous, right? So just think of a use case, right? Agri AI use case is there, right? A farmer talking his native language and asking a question. What should I do with, certain things happening with my crop in his language? And he's getting an answer that this is what you should do, step A, B, C, D. And you can contact this person for next level, right? So that will be fabulous. Someone talking in Marathi, Punjabi, Bengali, right? They don't know English. That will be beautiful, right? So there are massive opportunities which we have with, the data getting generated at the same time, AI getting implemented, and the current pace, what is happening around us, right? So yeah.
So we are largely sort of out of time. Kazim, any closing remarks you would want to give on regulations? And then I'll come to Ankit and Nikhil once for any closing remarks they might have. And we'll close this.
Right. So I think, a lot has been discussed with respect to the impact, with respect to, what is happening and, how we can sort of protect communities and the use cases. I think when it comes to regulation, look, there's already regulation happening. You have a data protection law, which will be hopefully, be enacted this year, which will regulate how personal data is collected by tech companies to produce and sort of give outputs. Then you have a new IT Act coming up where Honorable Minister has spoken about the fact that there will be some regulation of AI as well. Having said all of this, I do believe that we are behind the curve when it comes to developing some sort of principles as some sort of a guideline to protect the use of AI and development of AI. And I think over here, EU has done a lot of work. They've in fact implemented the AI Act, where they, grade and sort of grade different AI models based on high risk, low risk, etc. Right. So that's something which they have done. I think we need to also sort of look at something similar in terms of grading, and coming up with some sort of gradation of risks of AI and understanding the harms associated with abuse of AI. I think there's a lot more need for understanding research discourse required to understand how harms take place. So you can start grading the risk. You sort of look at some mechanisms to make it more trustworthy. But I think what you also need to do in all of this is, I think industry government collaboration is critical over here to make sure that, principles such as non-discrimination are applied. At this stage, we need to have human in the loop with respect to the development and deployment of AI. I think that's very important. With regard to data, you have to make sure that it's of high quality, it's as diverse as possible, and there is adequate protection of personal data if it is being used. I think which is why Italy was relooking at how OpenAI was being used. And of course, I think the CEO of OpenAI has said that, they want to comply with the GDPR and et cetera, et cetera. So I think privacy is important. Data protection is important over here. Preserving critical thinking is important. Ethical utilization is important. Inclusivity is important. So we need some broad principles, some sort of North Star, objectives or targets with respect to how the technology will be developed and how it will be used by industry. Towards those objectives, we have to start coming up with some sort of guidelines and principles. And I think, with respect to what is being done, there is enough example and evidence to sort of look at, okay, what works for India. I do not believe that you need a very heavy-handed approach where if somebody is found guilty, you sort of send them to jail or give a hefty fine. That could happen at a stage where we are convinced and we understand how the technology is being deployed. But at this stage, we definitely need collaborative approach or a more co-regulative approach. But I think we need some sort of guidelines because we are behind the curve and we cannot let a new technology being deployed without any guardrails at all. So you need some principles-based regulation, whether that will be a totally new act or it will be part of the new IT Act, certain aspects will be in the data protection bill, that can be debated. But I think we need some sort of standards over here with regard to its use.
Okay, thank you, Kazim. Nikhil, any closing comments that you would want to make?
I think Kazim is covered from a governance point of view. I think we are lacking from a governance standpoint, but we are also lagging from a technology standpoint, right? So I think we've been largely consumers. I think this is also our effort and time to be the producers of a uniquely new, different India in terms of system, right? So that's the seminal moment that we're looking at. My only draft is AI is here, ChatGPT is here, generative AI is yesterday. We are actually looking towards the future. So I think, what is to get into it, number one. So that's where the industry should focus to get into one. The government should focus, how do we regulate it, as Kazim rightly mentioned. It's the governance framework that needs to be catapulted, and all things that we do. But I think, when I talk about industry, I don't just talk about big industry, I talk about startups. This is their moment. They should actually also capitalize this. There are a lot of use cases that you could do. I think there's a third pillar that we are missing, which is the academia. And world over, AI systems have been deployed only in 15% cases in production. And that's the world over scenario, right? So people make a lot of AI models, but they don't get into production. There are two reasons for this. One, the ability to not scale up, reluctance in whether I should believe in AI or not believe in AI from a CXO standpoint. And the third is we don't have enough talent. So I think it's now incumbent upon academia to create that talent as well. And talent doesn't change because it's generative AI or discriminative AI. You still need to learn probability. You still need to learn statistics. You still need to learn machine learning and all the other techniques before you get into generation. So I think if these three pillars have an India policy map or a map for India, then I think we are in that progress shape, or we are on that train to the future. But if we continue to procrastinate in one of the ways and we lose the balance, then we'll actually not be able to take the other axis, right? So these three axes have to go in parallel. And I think that's what is important for India at this point.
Sorry, thank you so much. Ankit, you have the closing word now.
Sure. Thank you. I think Kazim and Nikhil covered a lot, almost all. But probably give me a few minutes. I will cover it in few pointers, right? So first is, I think we need research and innovation in India. I think Nikhil said in India, we need academic research, right? Academic research at, probably foundation model development or new methodology development. That is what is required. Second is innovation at startup level. So we need our, vibrant startup ecosystem to embrace Gen AI. Not only just, create wrapper and use BART or GPT at the center, but again, use the open source models and novel models, novel techniques to build new innovations, right? That's first. Second is basically we need adoption at scale, right? Adoption at government, adoption in the industries, right? The analog industries. That is very, very much required because the wave of Gen AI is going to change a lot of things. If we don't adopt at large, I think then there could be, probably delays or repercussions, right? So that's that. And when we adopt, we need responsible adoption of that, right? I think everyone knows we need governance, we need guardrails, right? So we need to build that. We need to build adoption with guardrails. We are just coming out with something called Responsible AI Guidance for Gen AI that was built with industry. We have built it with 30, industry companies and various startups and various think tanks. I think, but what I feel that's just a starting point. Those are principles, but we need operation protocols. We need more use case specific guidance, right? That has to be provided. So we need to work on all three, as I mentioned: research, innovation, adoption, and responsible adoption of AI. Thank you.
Thank you so much. With this, we come to close of this month's ThePrint Charcha. Thank you so much, Ankit, Nikhil, Kazim, for joining us today. And thank you so much for our subscribers for joining in, asking questions, for making this engaging. We hope we answered all your questions. And we will see you again next month. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, guys.